Imagine you being the fastest athlete in your school. You run so fast in races that even your friends cannot help but get jealous of your talent. One fine day, just before the race, they decide to take away your running shoes. Now you cannot run. You will be left helpless but to watch and clap as some other substandard athlete wins in your place. Painful, isn't it? Well, replace yourself with the Sterlite Copper Smelter Plant and your fake friends with the anti-national elements. The Sterlite Copper Smelter Plant was the shining beacon of the copper production not only in India but in the world. So what happened? Because of protest by some allegedly China-backed protests comprising Christian Maoist and eco-fascist groups, the Sterlite Copper Plant had to be shut down. Now, from a net exporter of copper, India has become the net importer. And the net loss in 3 years has amounted to nearly $12 billion, which is almost 90,000 crore rupees. Hi and welcome. This is TFI English, the National Socio-Political Analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Tribhuvan, and in this video, I will tell you what the Sterlite Copper Plant shutdown has cost India in 3 years. Let's begin. The rise of China in the last 4 decades tells us that nation's progress depends on its ability to produce goods and services for its consumption as well as exports. Modi government gave the clarion call first for Make in India in the first term and Atmanirbhar Bharat in the second term. However, this nationalist approach towards the political economy has not trickled down to the states, resulting in huge losses for India. It has been more than 3 years since the closure of Sterlite Copper's Thoothukudi based copper smelter plant. It was the largest copper plant in India and accounted for 40%, that is around 400,000 metric ton of the country's total copper smelting capacity. The plant was closed after China-backed protests by Christians, Maoist and eco-fascist groups. Despite repeated efforts, the union government has not succeeded in its reopening. And the Tamil Nadu government under Chief Minister Stalin is not keen on reopening the plant despite demands from workers and the fact that the plant worked for national interest. India was a net exporter of copper till financial year 2018 when the Sterlite plant was opened. From a net exporter of more than 3 lakh tons in financial year 18, the country is now importing around 2 lakh tons of copper every year. The country has earned around $2 billion every year from copper export, but in the last fiscal year, it footed a bill of around $1.2 billion on copper imports. With the renewed focus on infrastructure development of the Modi government, copper consumption in the country is growing exponentially. But most of this growing demand is being met through imports. Amid the ongoing commodity boom, the price of copper has skyrocketed in the international markets. In the last 1.5 years, the price of copper has appreciated by more than 100%. Considering the copper price since the closure of the plant in early financial year 2019, the prices have appreciated by around 125%. The net loss of foreign exchange due to the closure of Sterlite's plant in fiscal year 2021 was around $3 billion and is expected to be around $4 billion in financial year 2022. In the last 3 years, the country has already lost foreign exchange amounting to $8 billion with around $2 billion in financial year 2019 and $3 billion each in financial year 2020 and financial year 2021. The total loss due to the closure of the plant would reach around $12 billion or around 90,000 crore rupees by the end of the ongoing fiscal year. According to a report by Business Standard, industry people said that more than 1.2 lakh jobs were lost due to the closure of the plant. The Sterlite plant supported 400 small-scale downstream industries in the electrical, construction, chemical and automobile sectors. These sectors were dependent on the Sterlite unit for the production of copper, sulfuric acid and fluorosilicic acid. Sterlite unit also employed a large number of people and supported the nation's economy. Many people who were employed with Sterlite plant are now jobless and struggling to earn their living and are unable to provide sufficiently for their families. And finally, Pakistan and China are directly benefiting from the closure of the Sterlite copper plant. China was earlier dependent on Indian copper, but after the closure, copper export from Pakistan to China increased by around 400% in 2019. Pakistan exported copper worth $550 million in 2019 compared to $106 million export in the year 2018. In June 2020, Vedanta Limited chairman Anil Agarwal also wrote a letter to Prime Minister Modi urging him to reopen the plant, which is in the best interest of the nation. Agarwal pointed out that India has lost over rupees 40,000 crore due to the closure of Sterlite plant, with also losing $1.2 billion in foreign exchange. He added, the closure has led to idling and rusting of precious machinery and materials and loss of revenue to the exchequers of both the centre and the government of Tamil Nadu in the form of taxes, cess, etc. Earlier, Agarwal's Vedanta group had told Madras High Court that the anti-Sterlite protest was funded by Chinese companies, which ultimately benefited from the closure of the plant. Aryamasundram, the legal counsel for Vedanta group, had claimed these companies promoted and funded the agitations and protests against Sterlite. India's import bill for copper is $2 billion. The demand was being met by Sterlite earlier. The majority of India's copper export went to China, which is around 75%, and Taiwan, which is around 13%. The closure of Sterlite's plant benefited Chinese companies, which were facing a tough competition from Indian exports. Given the better quality of the Indian product, Chinese consumers preferred Indian copper, and this harmed the interest of the Chinese companies. Had the Dravidian parties not given up on the pressure of Naxal elements, alleged church mafia and anti-national protesters who were suspected to be acting on behalf of China, the state of Tamil Nadu was said to be the biggest benefactor of the rising copper prices. The clarion call for Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat would bring no positive result unless the idea seeps down to the state level and every state government sees protection to the industrial and economic activity as its primary role. India would struggle to gain economic advantages if anti-national elements and eco-fascists keep forcing the closure of the plant's metro sheds, particularly the RA incident, and manufacturing facilities, case in point, the Wistron incident. To make India economically powerful, the government of India must not succumb to the anti-national elements and take the responsibility to build a secure and prosperous India. We cannot let China and Pakistan take advantage of a slow judicial system and the freedom to protest against rightful businesses. In case of Sterlite Copper, national interest must come first and politics should not be allowed.